Beginning of the year, Tommy Fleetwood switches, goes from Ventus Blue TR that he had in his QI10 and his Mini into these Ventus Red Velo Plus products. Tom McKibben did it as well. There was kind of like a weird trend at the beginning of the year with a lot of players trying the red profiles. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that um, you're going to hear this term a lot, staying on top of the ball, which essentially means like, you're rotating, your chest is on top of the ball and you're kind of covering it. And you hear Tiger talk about that a lot. And from a fitting aspect, and when you're out on a tour driving range or you're working with players, theoretically, I say most of the time what that means is that the players are trying to sort of battle that big angle of attack that's like way up, 5 or 6 up with the driver. So in simple terms, they're trying to swing their driver and their mini drivers closer to how they would swing an iron versus having a driver swing, which you would see with like Bryson or Rory McIlroy or something like that, that tends to hit up way up on the driver, 4, 5, 6 degrees angle of attack up to get the launch. Then you're living in a world closer to Xander or another player that really covers the ball and wants their angle of attack to be a little bit more zeroed out. The reason why players like to do that is because although you can really gain distance and you can get launch and launch up and spin down when you start to hit up on it, that's kind of like the modern driver golf swing. It can get a little unruly, and as tour golf, the golf courses, the way that they're making it in some of these rough lines that they're starting to cut out at 320, 330 controls at a premium. And it's a lot easier to control the golf ball if your angle of attack's in a more neutral spot. It just is. So what Ventus Red does, or any red profile, essentially allows you to make that angle of attack swing at 0, 1, or 2, or whatever the angle of attack is. I mean, just I guess a less angle of attack. How do you say that? I don't know. More zeroed out angle of attack. What these red products will do, because the tip of those shafts is typically whippy. Usually the profile of of a red shaft is like a really stiff handle and a really whippy tip. So if you look at a shaft and it's like, it's handle stiff and then it gets progressively whippier as you get down to the tip of the shaft. What it allows you to do is stay on top of the ball. The ball still wants to launch and the spin still wants to stay down. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. So he went to those shafts in the beginning of the year and he's had a great year. I think he's had 5 or 6 top 10s this year. I don't have the stats in front of me, but Tommy's had a great year. And he's been driving the ball really, really well. The problem was the driver, so the QI35 driver, which he really likes, he loves, and he has learned that he needs loft for control. So I remember when he started with, hell, 5, 6, 7 years back, his driver loft went down to like 6.5, 7 degrees. He got way down there. So now he's in a 10.5 head that's opened up like a degree. And I think I've mentioned this before, but the way that tour heads work is they're not, just because it says 10.5 at -1 or whatever the number is, it doesn't necessarily mean it's exactly at 9 degrees or 9.5 degrees. It could be 9.8, 9.9. It depends on the head that Adrian pulls out of the drawer. So he's playing with more loft. And the reason why he needs more loft is because it's control. It ensures that the spin's going to be in a good spot. But what he was finding was that the driver wasn't, I don't want to say it wasn't going as far, but from a distance standpoint, it wasn't as efficient. And the mini driver was kind of the same way. So the mini driver was starting to creep up and get pretty close to the driver. So I think the way that it works is that he wasn't hitting the mini driver as straight. He was hitting it further, but not as straight. And he was hitting the driver, wasn't getting out as far. So like call it, 2 yards shorter with one and, maybe a yard or a yard and a half longer with the other one, but not as much control. The mini driver for Tommy has to be his go-to. I can hit this in the fairway club. And as the year has gone on, it hasn't been as guaranteed as it was maybe last year. So they get to Travelers and, they start after US Open, and I think, he missed the cut at the US Open. I don't know. I don't look at the stats. I probably should, but he didn't feel as that he was driving the ball with both of those clubs as well. So they started kind of looking at shafts. So what Adrian did was Adrian brought out options in red and then going back to his old shaft in this TR blue. So the story with the red also was that he plays a Kurokage in his 5-wood and his 9-wood, which is a similar profile to red. It's got a stiff handle and gets progressively kind of softer as you go down, not to the extremes that the red does, but it's the same kind of feel. That was another bonus of going to that shaft earlier in the year, was the fact that it was a similar feel. So the shafts kind of marry up from driver to 9-wood. But at some point, if it's not working exactly how you want it to work, you have to make some adjustments. So they go to the range. I think Monday rained. So it was kind of a hard day to test. But Adrian had brought out, I think 2 options with the red. I think one, it was like a 9-degree head and then a 10-5 with different tipping. So the way that they tip those shafts, the Ventus red shafts that Tommy has been playing, is they actually tip them 1.5 inches because the tip is so soft that they try to make them soft but slightly stiffer than you would normally feel. And that's just to get that feel of stability for Tommy at the bottom. I know this is super heady stuff, but gearheads like to know this stuff. I'm just giving you the full scoop. So what Adrian did was Adrian went and got the Ventus Red Velo Plus TX part, which has got it's a lower torque part. And I always say that those TX parts in the Ventus are kind of pre-tipped. They're already pretty tip stiff. So for the most part, like Sam Burns plays that shaft in his driver, and I think they put it straight in. I don't think they need to tip it because it's already pretty tip stiff. But Adrian still tipped this shaft, this new one. I think he tipped it 1/2 inch or 1 inch, again, just to recreate that feel and see if that gave him the ball speed that he was looking for and kind of, got him in a good place. But what happened was Tommy wanted to try the TR Blue just to see, because he had drove it so well last year. So they put the TR Blue in there, 6X, tip it 1 inch. And it goes in the driver, and right away, the ball speed started to go up a little bit, and carry starts to go out of there a little bit. Do the same experiment with the mini driver, and dispersion starts to get a little tighter. Everything starts to kind of go back to where he was. And you have to keep in mind that the heads that they're playing, that Tommy's playing, this QI35 actually lines up a lot better for him than the QI10 did. The reason why the QI10 wasn't as much of a seamless transition or easy to fit, I should say, is because of the weight configuration. So if you look at these the QI10 head that Rory plays in Scheffler and that Tommy was playing last year, it's called a dot head, but it's got a weight in the heel. So it's got heel side CG. So what they're having to do to those heads for the most part is internally weight them. So move weight forward or move it out towards the toe or whatever it needs to go. In these QI35 heads, you have a weight in the back and a weight in front, and it's right down the middle of the driver. So for somebody like Adrian that's fitting these guys, it makes it really easy because the center of gravity starts off neutral. So it's designed to just go straight, which for tour fitters, that's pretty much what they want. I mean, you ask any tour fitter, where do you want these drivers to start when you start testing drivers with these guys? Can you just make it go straight? And then I can make it go left to right. So QI35, that's essentially what they did. So where he landed, QI35, 10.5. I think it's at -1. I think the head's actually at like 9.7 or 9.8. Ventus Blue TR 6X, I think it's tipped 1 inch. And then the mini driver, same drill. I think it's 43.5 inches long. He is at 13. He's at 13.5, but I think it's at -1.5. So I think it's closer to 12 degrees. I think he's got 3 weights, two 3-gram weights in the back, and he's got a 15-gram weight in the heel and a 10-gram weight out towards the toe. I think that's how it's configured. And obviously it worked because he drove the piss out of the ball first 3 rounds at Travelers. And so they're obviously working, and you can't use Sunday as a marker for whether or not this combo works, because pressure's up. He's nervous. He's trying to win his first tournament. He's got a lead. Adrenaline's pumping. He's in his head, whatever the circumstances are. But obviously the performance of that setup is there. So kudos to Adrian and Tommy for figuring that out. So, that's a situation where, to normal people, it wouldn't feel like a huge switch. But on a tour range, what Tommy did was a pretty significant switch. It's not like switching out a ball, or it's not as that big, but it's one of those small changes that really kind of sparks some good play.